everyone, we are back. We three queens of Africa. I'm Micheline.
I'm Achieng.
And I'm Musonda.
And sitting among us is a wonderful woman, Suzanne Ngo Ayok. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you.
Bienvenue.
Welcome.
Merci.
Bienvenue.
Oh my goodness. I know it's been a while, it seems, but once again we have a guest and we do this from time to time. And Suzanne, honestly, I'm going to try to introduce you, right? And I know that I won't do it justice because this is one of our global leaders in sustainable development, in agriculture, in conservation, sustainability, with decades of experience, both globally as well as on the continent. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm talking about World Bank, Gates, MasterCard Foundation, as well as, of course, now Conservation International, where she is the Vice President, Chief Field Officer. That's it, right?
Thank you, ladies. Senior Vice President.
Let us redo. Senior Vice President, thank you very much. Chief Field Officer, thank you very much. And I think this is a title that really captures the gravitas, the seniority, the decades of experience that she brings to the table. Mm-hmm. And so in addition to being the most fabulous person among us today, we're gonna have to show you the back of her jacket. Suzanne is a rare gem. And this is why I wanted us to be here to speak to you about that. Rare because honestly it's rare to see a woman, let alone a black woman, let alone a black African woman, leading global issues of sustainability, of conservation. Mm-hmm. So that's what I want to wrap our discussion about today, ladies. Mm-hmm. It's like, wow, gee whiz, as my 12-year-old niece used to say. How do you get there? And how has this journey been to really the top? Because I consider that this is the top.
So this is very funny because somebody asked me that exact same question yesterday and I had to tell that story. And it is a story that didn't start with the ambition to work in conservation or sustainable development. I was working in culture in London and I loved it.
In culture?
In culture.
But doing what?
What does that mean, working in culture?
I was working for Access in Culture. I worked in art galleries. I worked at the October Galleries. I worked for the Hayward Gallery. I worked everywhere. Mm-hmm. I worked for the Mayor of London, organized cultural events. I was the curator for the Ghana 50 season for the Mayor of London and Ghana High Commission. I did some very cool stuff.
Amazing!
In the cultural sector.
Wow. Amazing!
And at some point, I decided that for myself, my family, I needed to come back to the continent. Mm-hmm. But I was very conscious that art will not feed us. Right? Especially because I'm not a creator, right? I'm not the artist. So I was thinking, I'm not the one with the skills. So
you're just curating.
So is the space ready? Is the continent mature? Is it something that is seen as adding value? Right. And we have so many basic humanistic needs on this continent that culture seemed a little bit frivolous. Yeah. At that point. You get me?
Yeah.
At that point.
Yes.
So decided to go back to university. Went to my local university, the one that I could literally walk to, and
in London,
and then went and did a master in sustainable development with a major in agriculture, and said, "Voila, let's see."
But what made you choose that?
Incredible, right?
Like how it was so different from what you'd been doing. Why that?
Exactly.
What drove you to that?
Because I was thinking, what is it that this continent needs? And it is to develop, right?
Yes.
We need to, in those days we were still called developing. We were still called developing country. Maybe that will tell my age, but we were still we just moved from the third world.
The issue of semantics.
Yes. You remember?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we are developing, then let me go and try to push.
Yes.
And help that development. So I said, okay, I'll go and do development studies.
That is such a great frame, when thinking about what to do. thinking about what does Africa need, you know. But I'd love that art kind of base to come back somewhere in our conversation, art and culture, because again, timing. Timing is everything, and I'm thinking that there's now a lot more opportunity for the artists, the cultural, you know, experts. But let me bring you in, Musonda, because this is your sister, your cousin in work. This is under the same family tree, you know, that you work in.
You know what I love about Suzanne's journey and what she's just articulated is and I want to hear a little bit more from her, because she loves art. She's an art collector. Because I've seen some of her amazing collection. We all have collected art, but what's so powerful about African art is telling the story, and in there, that story of development in the art. And so I think we are at an advantage because we tell our story as Africans and bring that into the conservation world. Do you feel you've done that?
I completely believe that.
Yes.
I come from a position, I'm not a savior. I don't come to save.
Oh, so good. Let me just drink. This is apple juice. This is not whiskey. so good. Oh my God. We're not saving.
I'm not saving. I'm preserving and projecting for the future of my children on this continent. And when I say my children, it's a royal my, right?
Yes.
Collective.
It's collective. It's our children.
Yeah.
So I'm not coming as a savior. I'm coming as a contributor. I'm coming as somebody that feels that I am responsible for a part of it.
Yes.
Contributor.
Yeah.
Keyword.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was it's a very different way of seeing it, because you come with the luggage. You know, I'm an African diaspora. I'm third generation in Europe. And we've been brought up with the tales and king and queens that we were, right? Not second-class citizens that we were in Europe, right?
Yes.
So you are brought up with that idea that the motherland is where everything will be possible, and that's what we need to protect.
Yes.
Right.
So you come back and say, I will support that protection movement.
Yes.
I will help. I will contribute, and I will make sure that my children have somewhere to be, where they can be proud, where they are be kings, where
That's
they be,
brilliant.
where they will we feel that they belong. So so that really came. And when I did culture, it was to educate that world where I grew up in,
Right.
about the beauty and diversity of African
Yes.
of African arts.
Yeah.
So.
This is brilliant. You
So
know,
that's how one relates to the other, really.
it's
Yeah.
intrinsic
It's always
connect.
been that story of what does Africa represent to us. It is that nurturing.
In the
that
fabric. I mean,
fabric.
look at your
Yes, what it is,
amazing.
you know.
Yeah.
Exactly. And,
Yeah.
and you know, so here's the thing. You know, I work in spaces that are around investing in impact and looking at social and environmental concerns as well. And when it comes to, I mean, if I think about the environmental part, if I think about the meetings for COP28, but even other regular meetings in the environment space, I am looking for some melanin. I am looking for some Black Africans. And at the higher echelons, we're not there. So I'm thinking you are alone at the table. I might be wrong. This is my vista. Musonda, you can chime in as well. And so I suppose, you know, tell me if I'm wrong or right, this idea that really there are very few. And tell me, therefore, how you lead being very, very scarce.
We always perceive as an outlier, and I think that we do a little bit of overcompensating being there.
What do you mean by that?
Like overcompensating.
We overcompensate it.
Interesting.
I would wear, sorry, Musonda and I were having that conversation, and I took out a suit and she said, oh, that's too bright. I said, that's what I want.
I love that. Yeah.
I need to be seen.
I said, I want to be seen on the panel. I would wear bright orange.
Yeah.
If you want to miss me, you can't. And then when I come out down from that panel, you would recognize the back of that jacket everywhere. You remember that I told you that?
Intentionally wanting to be seen?
It is
What is this
intentionally
about?
wanting to be
To
seen.
make the statement that
Make
you
the
are present,
statement
I
that we
am
are
here.
So we
I
make
love
it
it.
from the quality
Yeah.
of the work, because I think that we really have pride in excelling.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
We are making sure that there's nothing that can be said about us.
Yes, I'm gonna come to that actually.
And then we have to be also physically seen, right?
Yes.
Right.
So the majesty, the splendor, the everything, the eloquence, the jewelry, the colorfulness.
Talk about
needs
jewelry.
to be there.
Love it.
Right?
That's really
It needs
interesting.
to be up to a point where nobody should be indifferent when they have met you.
Yeah.
Or they love you or they hate you,
Yeah.
but they will always remember you. And that's something that is always here.
Yes.
So I have a question on that. You know, you want to be seen, and you make sure you're seen, and you make sure that every time you communicate, you know, it's substance. Because
Exactly.
Correct.
you're representing a continent for all intents and purposes, or people of color, which is beyond even this continent.
Yeah.
How do you find that you need to sometimes be quite, I'm going to use the word loosely, aggressive or confrontative? Because I can imagine that as you're seated and present, not everybody is embracing everything you're saying. Not everybody is embracing your presence in the room. How do you navigate that? Do you find yourself having to be confrontative sometimes?
So we have an expression in French which is that mon ventre n'est pas un magasin. So I don't keep things in my stomach. So, and I have a very direct way. You know, English is a second language for me.
Yeah.
So sugarcoating it doesn't come that easy.
Yeah.
So I go for very practical words. I want to make sure that people got exactly what I meant.
Clear.
It's clear. But at the same time, the fact that I'm affirming myself shouldn't be perceived as being aggressive.
And this is the thing, and I know where you're coming from.
Yeah.
you
The
know,
fact that I'm
Ashe.
making a point and I'm
Yes.
defending my point
Correct.
shouldn't be perceived as being aggressive.
Not to be perceived, because I think there's
Yeah.
that black angry woman
Oh.
label,
Which is
that people put on us, and this is
Yeah.
now across any sector. I'm not just
Yeah.
talking about
Yeah.
her.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
When you're just actually just being you, being clear, being assertive, and this is exhausting actually. But is that where you were coming from with the question?
Yeah, because I'm just curious that there will always be people who maybe feel you shouldn't be there because they have either conscious or unconscious bias.
Of
You know,
course.
and they see you, and they don't see an expert in conservation. They see a black woman
With
and
an
they hear your
orange
name
dress.
with an orange dress, and then with a name that is African.
Yes.
So that's what they see first. And for me, the fact that that's what people see first, instead of seeing a professional who has made it in this sector or this industry, means that they already have a bias, they already have barriers. It means that whatever you say, there's always the risk that people will challenge or minimize or confront what you're saying. And so I'm just curious about how you deal with that, you know?
But I think
I
that this
wanna-
question also applies. It applies to me, but it also applies to you, Musanda, right?
Yeah, no, totally. But I want to come to you because we're talking about you. And building on what Acheng has said is you moved from different sectors. You did the arts, and all of this seemed to weave in very beautifully. And then you come, you talk about food systems, and then you walk away from that and come to the world of conservation.
Conservation
Now,
specifically.
bringing your chair to that table. Like, I am here, and I'm not going anywhere. How did that feel?
Can I add to that? How did that feel? And how does it feel? This is where no sugarcoating.
No
Because
sugarcoating.
we got people from Amsterdam to like all over the diaspora, all the way even Papua New Guinea. They were listening and following us, which we really appreciate.
Thank
So,
you.
global audience. So people, Kenya and conservation, I've got to say, is so white. And you can see I'm not sugarcoating. So how does it feel, and how does it feel in Kenya? Ooh.
That's a loaded
Have
question.
some apple juice.
Yeah, it is apple juice for real.
Take a sip of that as well.
You know, Musonda alluded to it. I come from agriculture. So there's always been that kind of historical opposition between conservation and production,
Correct.
right?
Right.
You're protecting animals, and I'm caricaturing here. You're protecting animals, and we are feeding the world. That's always been that kind of opposition. And so when I come and pull that chair to the table, that's how I'm seen. What's that woman they've recruited that come from the world of agriculture? Those people are the enemy anyway.
Interesting.
And I say, no. we are interlinked. What you call sustainable agriculture, or
Regenerative
climate smart,
nowadays.
regenerative, is actually agroecology. That's the same. We use different
harmony.
words to say the same thing.
Exactly.
You're talking about biodiversity. We're talking about crop relatives. We're talking. We
Talking
are
about crop what? I want to make
crop
sure I know.
wild relatives. So we are using
Interesting. I like that.
different words to talk exactly about
The same thing.
We're not opposed. It's not a war of one against the other. But we are in a world that is increasing, has to serve the needs of a growing population. That idea of out of Africa, large tracts of wilderness, Harrison Ford, the foot on the
Yes.
lion.
Karen Blixen,
is a little bit an image of the past, right? And I arrived in conservation in Kenya, and all the conservation organizations but one are in Karen.
And tell us what that means.
And there is that big movement of saying decolonizing conservation, but every single one of us, when I entered this world, are in Karen.
And what does that mean for people? What is Karen in Kenya? I want you to break it down. I was born here, so I'm already biased.
So Karen in Kenya, and I'm a Cameroonian, so for me it really comes from a place of shock.
Yes.
So you have, in Ghana, you have that place that you call cantonment.
Cantonment, yes. Yes.
That used to be the place where the white colonials used to live.
Yes.
But the only thing that remains of cantonment today is the name.
It's so sad though.
I was really surprised to arrive in Kenya and see that cantonment still existed, and its name was Karen. And then when you arrive, you Karen, and then somebody tells you, as you hear, the attractions are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4 is Karen Blixen's house.
Yes.
Karen Blixen. Oh yeah. That's where a plantation used to be. So I said, okay, that's the plantation. From the plantations where white colonials were living, and at independence, that's where white Kenyans remained. So you still have the cantonment.
The enclave.
And then that vision, and I will come back to that out of Africa image, right? Of Robert Redford with the hat, the plane at the back.
Yes.
If you haven't seen the movie,
the foot
Karen
on the
Blixen.
lion.
Out of Africa, yeah.
Out of Africa.
You're like, so that place exists.
Yeah.
It's here, it's real. It
It's
takes
real.
about, at this time, you could get there in about 30 minutes from anywhere in sort of central Nairobi. Yeah.
So an auntie of mine even came here and said, as it's here, I want to go to Tsavo. I said, Tsavo is not in Nairobi. But in the movie, Tsavo was a thriving town.
Yes.
So, the kind of...
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
exactly. But the thing, it still existed. So to me, it was a real, oh my God.
It's quite a shock.
Yeah.
It's quite a shock. But when I speak to my Kenyan friends and colleagues,
They're not shocked?
ma'am, it's like that.
Yeah.
That's the way it is.
It's
But,
absolutely.
God,
So the first decision I've made is to say, I'm moving out of Karen.
yes.
Yeah.
Because you see, the
Power to
optics
you.
of having this incredibly powerful organization and the dozens of others in this white enclave that still has the vestiges of the past, the optics of that, I think, are horrendous. And therefore, being able to move that and make that statement that I will not be a part of this.
And you see,
I think is-
don't you
is-
think
is
it's really
weird.
poignant that the optics are so horrendous, and yet it's been the status quo all this time.
It has been the status quo.
And there's a reason why.
Because it is dominated, that sector in Kenya is dominated by this part of the population. I have nothing against anybody, but we have to be thankful of the fact that they were the first of opening the eyes and being very conscious and opening, attracting funding and mobilizing people around that idea of conservation in Kenya. I think that at the moment of independence, our forefathers had more pressing issues, right? Building a new nation, and maybe looking at conservation and the protection of our biodiversity was not at the top of the agenda.
Yeah.
So we should be thankful. They actually worked in making sure that this remained on the agenda and on the global agenda.
But I also think that that natural world for us is not something that we delineated as there. We have to conserve because we lived with it, which is why the Maasai, the interaction of the natural world.
Absolutely.
Oh my, so much to talk about.
No, listen.
Let's finish. Let's finish.
These are really
But-
important points.
but
Please finish.
That's
Yes.
what led, and that's where I was going to go to.
Yeah.
That it led to that conservation in spite of the people. You had to conserve from the people that were becoming that young nation. Right? So there was still that kind of protecting by exclusion. And I have to say, I was in agriculture and I was very comfortable in work in agriculture because you're looking at solutions to feed billions.
Right, right.
I got approached to go in conservation the first time. And I said no because the organization I was approached by was a huge land buyer. Buying land
Yeah.
was part of their model of conservation.
Yeah. So you're thinking this is in conflict with feeding people as well. This is
No,
not,
I
what
was
are you
thinking land for us African is a very tricky
Sacred.
issue.
Yes.
Very intimate issue.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
This is what is at the basis of the community.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So that idea of saying that you remove communities and purchase land in order to conserve did not work for
Right.
me.
Yeah.
When that same headhunter came back, said, Suzanne, I have the job for you. It is wonderful. What? I told you that this is your story. I'm good with my beans and
Yes, feeding millions. I mean, what an amazing mandate, feeding millions.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I get that conflict. Yeah.
you to call me in this your birds and elephants again, please.
Yes.
And she said, you know, Suzanne, you will love it. The leader of that organization has melanin.
Has melanin.
And they are champions of community-led conservation. They do
Bingo.
not work in protected areas. I
Wow.
say, I'm listening.
You see?
I said, I'm listening.
Yes.
That's a very different take.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I know that we've probably gone beyond the time that we usually have, but I would like that point to really sink, right, around the fact that, people of the land, the Maasai, what we're saying, indigenous people, whatever weird terms.
Which is also
that,
very problematic.
Exactly. That's why I say
Everything
weird
doesn't like it.
terms.
Yes.
I really dislike those terms. But I think the point you're making is powerful, Musonda.
Yeah.
When we look at, I think, decolonizing some of these spaces, I think it's because in conservation people have ignored some of the rich knowledge
Yeah.
of people who are already in harmony
Yes.
with land, with food systems, with their own way of governing and
Conserving.
managing and conserving our
Absolutely.
countries.
And for goodness
Right?
sake, our names were named after the day of the month, the season, the food,
So much
the
richness
nature.
there. And therefore, when you talk about a Karen, when we talk about spaces that are, have been just too white, there's some historical, sort of linked to colonization, those kinds of reasons behind it, right? Thank you so much, people. It is a wrap. There is so much more to talk about. But thank you so much for coming. Merci pour être venu.
Thank you for having me.
And do not forget
Yes,
to
subscribe.
subscribe. Okay, merci. Au revoir.